Hey everybody, it's Nathan from savagelandsnews coming in after a long break. Very long break. Massive work trip. Haven't touched cardboard in like 4 weeks. Just opened some bright lights. It's been amazing. And so I'm behind in the game. I don't know what's going on with these new heroes. I don't know how the rules work. I don't know what they do. So you know what I did? I invited one of my personal friends, Scott, here. One of these so-called smarty ape judges. You know what I'm talking about? You've probably seen him running around any event in North America. I've seen him running around wearing that bright yellow judge outfit, answering my questions, getting people in trouble, what he does best. So yeah, everybody say hello to Scott. How you doing today, Scott?
I'm doing well. I don't have the official yellow, but I am trying to wear my nicest clothes for the interview.
You do look quite snazzy, man. Quite snazzy. So Scott is a local to my game store, Portland Game Store here in Portland. Who would have guessed? And he has judged several events around my area, and I think I've seen you at one of the big ones too, right?
Yeah. I was at U.S. Nationals this last year.
Yeah.
So if you were doing any of the side events on Saturday, maybe you saw me.
He's a force to be reckoned with in the judge world, and he's actually very active on the forums. He's active in the SLN Discord. He has the title of Smarty Ape. You can see him in the Judge Discord, the Judge Hub, which I'll have linked in the description below. If you guys have any other questions once we're done with this video. But yeah, he was kind enough to write me up a bunch of interesting rules interactions that came with this set, right? And like I said, I had not touched it at all. So some of the things he wrote down for me kind of blew my mind. I'm getting caught up. Do you want to dive into him, Scott? You want to jump right into it?
Yeah, let's do this.
Let's do this. All right, so we have a brand new, beautiful presentation put in front of your face right now. Thanks pretty much entirely to Scott. I asked him for a couple rules interactions because I was interested in starting there. He wrote me a dictionary. That dictionary I put together in a slightly prettier presentation, not really. And we're going to start with something really interesting. As a competitive Flesh and Blood player, you always need to stay on top of the rules changes. You have to. Not just the ones that are interesting interactions with cards, but also changes to the structure of events, the rules of events, and so on, right? So we have a pretty, it's a mild but very important change to understand, and that is the tardy policy and the decklist policy. So you want to give us a quick rundown of what those changes are?
Yeah, you got it. The tardiness policy used to be different between the competitive and the professional rules enforcement levels. So basically, your pro quests and your calling day ones versus your calling day twos and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. What it used to be was competitive rules enforcement levels, DQs, calling day one. You had up until 3 minutes before you copped an IP2. And then after that, you would get the IP2. And then if you still weren't in your seat from the start of the round, after 10 minutes, you would just get a match loss. This was more strict at the professional level of rules enforcement. And if you were late at all, you got an IP2. And then again, at 10 minutes, you would get that match loss. So what this change did was it just brought those things together. So competitive and professional rules enforcement for specifically tardiness are the same now. Okay. So what it is now is don't be late. If they start the timer, you're not in the seat, you're tardy. Okay. You have up until a minute before it's anything more than a warning. So less than a minute, it's a warning. That's not great, but no one's losing games for a warning. Yeah. After a minute, that's when you get the IP2. It sort of goes from it. So less than a minute, you get a warning. A minute to 10, you get an IP2, and still after 10 minutes, it's a match loss. So this just brought that together. So you don't have to try and juggle your bathroom break any differently between day one.
Okay. So, I mean, yeah, important to note, just don't be late in general. It's kind of disrespectful, in my personal opinion. Try not to be. But this impacts people at their local levels now, too. So not just major events, right? This is at ProQuests, right. RTNs, right?
Yep. RTNs are a competitive level as well. So PQs are coming up, when the head judge calls timing around and starts the timer. That's when it starts ticking down. So you just need to be in your seat. On that, they've made a special note that you have to have a decklist submitter you're allowed to. So Nathan, I think that's something that maybe you saw.
Yeah, at the Battle Hardened, we had somebody get a match loss because they forgot to submit their deck list. It was like 10 minutes into the match or 20 minutes, or they got a deck check. It was a second round. They got deck checked.
Yeah.
Boom.
It was
Match
it was real bad. No one
That's
likes
sad.
that stuff.
Yeah, that's a good way to lose a tournament. It's a good way.
Yeah, it's a good way to touch the stove and get burnt. So take it from us. Just don't touch it. It's hot.
Yep. Submit your deck lists. Don't be late. And then finally, right, you put a special note here because you mentioned it gets brought up all the time as a judge. Everybody complains about is they get slowed played out of a tournament.
Oh, jeez.
So
Everyone, yeah. Yeah, just call a judge. It's one thing to come up after the event's over and say, I was running so hot, I had such a good run, and then I had the 20D reactor on my, or like someone brought Oldham back from the grave, and they have new Guardian defense reactions. I've never even seen them, and I went to time. They played so slow, and they kept reading their cards, and I got a draw.
Yeah.
And the thing I always say is, it's too late to tell me now. Like the time you do that is you see it, you raise your hand, you get a judge over there to scope it out.
Yeah. Raise your hand, call a judge. Don't be late. Submit your deck list. Kind of common things, but you'd be surprised. I saw a very good player get a match loss at the Battle Hardened. So be careful. All right. So now we have some more interesting things, especially coming out of the Bright Lights. There's some rules change, some general ones, and then we're going to dive into some interesting interactions that come from each one of the new heroes and what they can do. But as far as general rules updates, we're going to start off with tokens are now cards, sometimes kind of, right?
Yeah, I mean, mostly pretty much. I got the line from the comprehensive rules here for us. So for those of you following at home, 1.4.1 covers what a token is. A token is a card created by an effect and ceases to exist when it leaves the arena. And the A card is the big part of this.
Yes.
So now things like the hyperdriver tokens that Maxx Nitro is making, or everyone's favorite spectral shield, that's a card, and that counts for effects that care about specifically cards. So there was a new illusionist card that was released in the expansion slot of Bright Lights. Shout out to expansion slots. Phantom Tide mod that's looking for illusionist cards. So, you chump block a snatch with a 3-block and 1 spectral shield. Spectral shield gets popped by ward. Phantom Tide mod is getting a counter from that. Because it sees spectral shield got blown up. That counts. It gets the +1.
Yeah. So that's actually very different than before. So I'd keep that in mind. It's probably going to have more and more intricate rules interactions as more of these types of cards come out. There's probably a few other examples that we could think of right now that would be impacted. So get creative with this one.
Yeah. Shout outs to your local judge trying to run an LL format.
Oh, yeah. LL format is going to be a cluster. Okay.
It's real and it's our friend.
Another one that I find really interesting, and I kind of like this change, to be honest, is players now order their own triggers on all turns. So to some extent, you lose control of what your opponent can do when you're giving them triggers to react to, which is a minor change, but it's really going to impact, of course, illusionists and probably wizards, because they're the ones who abuse this stuff anyways. But you
just keep getting away with it.
Illusionists just keep getting to break the rules, kind of, but not. So Celestial Como and Dream State as a good example of layering multiple triggers, and you now are responsible for them, right?
Yeah.
Interesting.
So just to set this up, the way it used to be was turn player got all the control. They could do whatever they want when triggers went on the stack. They got to order everything. They got to order their triggers. They got to order your triggers. They got to mesh them together. So it was like me, then you, then you, then me, then me.
Yeah.
And it was just kind of a mess. And what it meant was that certain fiddly synergy stuff where you really cared about the order of those triggers could get disrupted pretty easily.
Yeah.
So the example that was in the Back Alley Oracle article that came out alongside this rules update was Celestial Kimono and Diadem. And basically what the update allows, and to reframe this, is ordered trigger policy is now the same as replacement effect policy.
Okay.
So turn player gets to decide who the order of whose effects go on the stack first, just as a chunk. So mine, then all of yours, or all of yours, then all of mine, but no more of that weird fiddly interweaving.
Right?
Yeah. So that's all gone. It's replacement effect ordering and triggered effect ordering. It's all the same now. So turn player still gets to decide which player's effects go first, but the owning player gets to decide within that.
Yeah, that's actually, I was going to ask. So, I mean, that makes sense, right? So now you choose the blocks. Still as the turn player, you get to pick if you go first or if they go first as far as the layering goes, but you no longer get to weave them together. I kind of like that because it did feel a little, I don't know, inopportunistic. I don't know. It felt weird when my opponent picked all my stuff for me when some of them felt like they were mine, I don't know. But
yeah, it was kind of crummy, especially if they had a pretty good idea of the strict order you wanted to resolve stuff in.
Yeah, exactly.
They could just sort of clobber you, and it felt rough. It felt like a weird skill check that you didn't really actually.
And then our final change, which is again another freaking illusionist buff to some extent, is Phantasm only closes the chain if the attack is not resolved. Now, you were able to be attacked by a Phantasm attack. They could go again. They could attack you with a second one, and then you could buff your attack back earlier on the combat chain and explode the card of Phantasm, basically shutting off the combat chain. How many times did you really use this rule? Not very often.
Yeah,
but
you have a defensive art of war, and you decide that you really just want to teach someone a lesson,
like a lightning press.
That you want to win, but you just want to show someone what's up.
Yeah, you can do some weird stuff. I don't know how many times this is going to actually come up in a game, but we've lost the ability to toy with illusionist players from 3 chains ago. So that's too bad. Too bad.
Yeah, gone are the days where novice illusionist players get spanked for leaving the combat chain open instead of closing it, reopening it, closing it, reopening.
Yeah.
So this was sort of like a change to bring it back into rules as intended as opposed to rules as written, and how that effect gets skewed over time. So Phantasm, it's a functional errata. What it used to be is whenever it's defended by a non-illusionist attack action card with 6 or more power, destroy this and close the combat chain. What it is now is they just cut it off after the destroy this. Whenever it's defended by a non-illusionist attack action card with 6 or more power, destroy this. So that means, you can still pop stuff that was on the chain if they didn't close it, but it's not going to close the chain. You're not going to lose your go again on your current attack or anything like that.
Yeah. Interesting. I get it. I'm sure this will come to bite us in the future.
Yeah. Fractal Replication's a heck of a card, and if they can keep that chain open, it's just going to get more and more
Fractal is another nightmare. But okay, so some more interesting interactions, right? Crank, it looks like a trigger, but it is an identity replacement. So it actually is not. It doesn't go on the stack, and you can't react to it. Is that correct?
Yeah, so you can react to the item that's being played. So Maxx plays a hyperdriver. Maxx gives all his hyperdrivers Crank. Crank says, when this as this enters the arena, you may remove a steam counter from it. If you do, gain an action point. That as this enters the arena is what we watch for identity replacement. We've seen it on stuff like Yindarai.
Yep.
When Yindarai transforms as this enters the arena, put an endurance counter on this. It's the same idea. So you can still respond to the card being played, but it doesn't do this double action thing where it's played, then you have the trigger, and you have 2 spots that you can respond. It's just as it's played. Once it's played, okay, it enters the arena. They can resolve the Crank, remove the steam counter action.
Yeah, kind of minor, but I'm sure it'll come up in one of the Icelander Wizard Kano games at one point. I'm sure somebody will raise their hand. They'll be upset because they thought they could delay something. I don't know. But
they wanted a little more information.
Yeah, just a teeny bit more. Because wizards are always taking from you. They're always
like those
taking
big
something.
Plays. They love priority.
They love their priority. Okay, this one is more interesting to me because this one kind of, for a second, it totally makes sense, but I didn't think about it until you wrote it down. Most Evos count as actions. So they count for overpower. Even if it's in your equipment zone, it's still an action. And because they're an equipment, they do not turn off effects like pulping and barrage and beatdown. That is kind of crazy.
I thought you would like that.
I
Yeah,
love this one.
pulping and barraging beatdown. These blocked by non-equipment cards. They're coming back, and it looks really good. Teklovossen. Many people are saying maybe that's a control deck that has sort of equipment matters feel to it. That's going to try and slow down the game until they can get over the top with those big Evo equip attacks. That they have, War Machine, Annihilator, all that stuff. So what this is saying is when we look at the type box of a card, says Evo Steel Soul Processor is our example here, it's action equipment. So it is both an action as well as equipment in all the zones that it's in. So you block with it from hand into barraging beatdown. That doesn't count towards the 2 to turn off the +4 from barraging beatdown.
Yep.
Or pulping for that go again. Pretty nice.
It's looking like that new control dash that uses these things is going to be even easier to squish with my boy Rhinar. We'll still lose to everything else, but Evo's new Rhinar bait card. And another interesting one, we had our first, I don't think this was technically the first, maybe the second time we'd seen a block card just because of the way they were released, but block card, now a type, it gets around overpower, but you cannot play it from Arsenal unless it specifically says so, right? So
yep, a block card can defend. It cannot be played. I believe in the round the table set, a ninja block card has the new keyword ambush, which explicitly allows it to defend from the arsenal zone. So that's going to look a lot like down and dirty. So you can sort of think of it as if it has ambush, it's kind of the proto down and direct. Otherwise, you don't play it. Can't do it from the arsenal. You just have got to do it from hand. So dominate still applies, but it's not an action. So it gets around overpower real nice.
Yeah, we're going to see. I think we've seen quite a few more overpowered cards come out in this set. We saw them in the last set. We saw them in, it looks like it's becoming a more and more popular type of card. So block cards will probably have a grander purpose in the game eventually, right? Because it is explicitly different than a defense reaction. So it doesn't trigger things. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah. It's it gets around stuff. It's fun. It's new.
It's fun.
Speaking of fun.
Yeah. Dash.io. Judge's new favorite hero is the title. I came up with it. Explicitly, she's got a lot going on. Okay. So she is the new frontier of slow play and extra card airs. Dash.io's hero ability is functional all of the time. So this one was really interesting to me. It's functional all of the time, and you can always look at the top card of your deck. However, your top card of your deck doesn't update in real time.
Right. So this is funky.
Yes, for sure.
So maybe you went to a Bright Lights pre-release, Lord knows I did, and someone picked Dash.io, and just every couple of seconds, they would just pick up their card, they'd look at it, all right, it's still there. Okay, still not an item. Wait. Gotta look at it. All right. Go ahead. So looking forward to this. Again, raise your hand if you see slow play, all of that. But Dash's ability, she can always look at the top card of her deck. However, in order to limit some of the weirdness around what that means, an actual game of Flesh and Blood, what the top card of your deck is only updates when you reach a new priority window. So when any player would gain priority, that's when the top card of your deck updates to catch up with new games.
Really
so a couple of examples. Yeah, it's weird to say, but really what it is just to stop you from like overextending and looking past what the top of your card is and something else. So we got a couple of examples here. Dash checks the top card of her deck, sees it's an item, sees it isn't an item, so she plays an attack and boosts it, giving it go again. Boost is part of the additional cost that she can pay. She does that, and then before leaving the layer step, she can check again. So she's received priority back. She can now check the new top of her deck, which is updated because she got priority back. She sees it's an item now. All right, Windmill Slam. We got that instant speed thing. We're going to go for it. So before their opponent gets to respond, they've gotten to recheck the top of their deck, sees that it's an instant that they can play within their priority. The other example is what Dash cannot do. Dash controls and activates Evo Data Mine, which is a limited staple
Yep.
Maybe you'll see it. Essentially, what it says is you can draw the top card of your draw the top card of your deck, and then put a card from your hand back on top of your deck. So kind of like ragamuffins. But what Dash cannot do is she cannot activate Evo Data Mine, draw the top card of her deck, and before finishing resolving that ability, look at the top card. So because she hasn't gained priority back, she can't look ahead into the future. She has to put a card back from her hand and finish the resolution of that ability, get priority, and then be able to check what the new top is.
Yeah. So, I mean, for those of you who want like a little bit easier of an explanation, you need priority, and the thing you just did needs to complete, right? So you can't cheat the system by getting like a Whisper of the Oracle, opting 3 cards, holding the 3 cards in your hand, and then dashing the 4th card. You can't do that.
Right.
That's against the rules.
Opt and reveal don't technically change the top of your deck. So if you reveal it, it's still on top of your deck. Opt until you finish it, it's still the 3 cards that are on top of your deck. 1 card or however many you opt. You can't say, all right, I'm opting 1. What's that next one?
Yeah, you can't break the rules. Can't cheat. You can't opt while shuffling to put your deck in a very perfect order. Or not?
No. If Dash is looking at the top card of your deck after they shuffle, and then they're looking at you, waiting for you to cut it for them. Just
Try and be smart. Don't be a jerk.
Don't let them do that.
But yeah, priority. You can only use her ability if the priority has passed. You own priority, and the card your top card of your deck has changed. Yeah.
So it's not even if Dash gets priority, it's if anyone gets priority.
Okay, fair.
So really it's just once you start a sentence, you got to finish it. Once you start resolving an ability, you got to finish resolving it before the top card changes and you look what it is.
That's why he's a judge. That sounded much more correct. Okay, now we have Maxx, who from an artistic perspective, I'm really interested in. Maybe not from a play perspective, but we're going to get there. I've only tried one of them so far. Anyways, so Maxx Nitro and Hyperdrivers. So I think these ones were a little more obvious, but they've already become problems in the judge discords. You can only make a new token Hyperdriver if you've boosted any card.
Yeah.
Wow.
So you got to boost before.
Yeah, why is that?
It's just one of those things. It's part of his hero text. Activate this ability only if you've boosted this turn. So you got to boost before you can activate it. So you can't just accrue infinite hyperdrivers. So like stall. Use your last yellow to make a new one and then pass priority. So it's just sort of to keep that down. And then the other side of that is you can only swing his specialist weapon, Banksy, if you've cranked any card. So he can crank his hyperdrivers or other items that he plays out. And if he chooses to resolve the optional crank, then he can swing Banksy. So it's just something to keep in mind as people come to terms with this new hero.
Yeah. And then I'll put it in the description below. There's like more than 17 cards that interact with Hyperdriver. So he's got a lot of interesting interactions and cards and rules that you're going to have to really get on top of if you're interested in maining this hero, right? And then 2 much more specific rules interactions that have already come up in the judge discord is that you can only gain action points on your turn, on your action phase. You don't get
the action phase.
Pull it back.
Yeah. So it was always in the rules that you couldn't gain action points on an opponent's turn. So like Kano couldn't play Whisper of the Oracle off the top of his deck from Kano or something and get go again off of that. That was never allowed. But now with Hyperdrivers and Crank, which generates action points, this had a effect with Blessing of Ingenuity from Dynasty, where at the start of your turn, you can bring Hyperdrivers from, I believe, the Banish Zone or the Graveyard into play. Maxx says, I can crank all of my Hyperdrivers. This just says, since this is in the start of your turn and not actually your action phase, the start of your action phase, if you do crank them, you're not just going to start your turn with 4 action points. So,
unfortunate.
Maxx, it's probably for the best. I'm not sure I want 4 action point pistol Maxx just running around shooting like crazy.
Yeah. So yeah, those of you who immediately, I saw that in some of the Discords, blessing of ingenuity. I'm going to start off with all these action points. I'm going to be smarter than my opponent. The rules, nope, they got you. You can't do that. Unfortunate.
We also read Discord.
Yeah.
Turns out.
The judges are where you're typing and they're ruining your fun actively. Okay. And then one final interesting interaction with Maxx. Tyler boosts an attack with a hyperdriver in play with 1 steam counter and banishes Crankshaft / Big Bertha from the boost. 2 triggers go on the stack. From the boost, 1 exit turn when you boost, remove a steam counter, gain 1 resource hyperdriver, and add a steam counter to a hyperdriver you control, Crankshaft Big Bertha. You go ahead.
Sorry, I'm finding the card so I can read.
Oh, yeah. So what you want to do
Crankshaft.
in this interaction is you want to add the steam counter first because it keeps your hyperdriver alive. So as the turn player, you get to pick the order in which your things happen, and you really want to make sure you're layering things in a way that is the most beneficial to you as a player. And in this circumstance, you want to put the steam counter on first, and then you want to trigger the next step. So that way your beautiful hyperdriver you worked so hard for stays around another turn.
Yeah. So it's just one of those synergies. They both triggers initially occur from boosting. So banishing the card from the boost and hyperdriver's trigger of remove a steam counter, gain a resource. Hyperdrivers, as soon as they go to 0 steam counters, there's a trigger that goes on the stack that once it's on the stack will destroy the hyper. So you can't try and instant speed cheat a steam counter onto it at that point. So you just have to be proactive about it, make sure that it goes up to 2, then back down to 1 situation.
Yeah. And your opponent might try and shark you on that. It's possible. They might be like, what are you doing right now? Which order are you doing it in? And if you can't answer that question, I've seen it happen.
Knowledge is power.
Knowledge is power. That's why wizard players and illusionist players are terrifying.
Speaking
Okay.
of knowledge.
Hyper X3. Kind of complicated. Go ahead. Take this one away.
So Maxx gives all of his hyperdrivers crank, as we discussed. If Maxx has Hyper X3 equipped, Hyper X3 has a fun little piece of text on it that says, whenever you banish a hyperdriver from boosting, put it under this. It's not may, it's a must, so you got to do it. So if Maxx plays something like BIOS Update, which says when you boost an item, you may put it into the arena. Again, we have those 2 competing triggers where the order that you do things. So if Maxx resolves the Hyper X3 first before the BIOS update, Hyper X3 sees that you banished a hyperdriver, grabs it from the banish zone, tucks it under itself. All good. BIOS update, there's no longer anything in the arena. It's effectively gone once it's been become a sub-object of the Hyper X3, and it just fizzles. If we go the other way, though, that's where it gets screwing. So BIOS update can take a hyperdriver that has been banished, and before the Hyper X3 trigger has resolved, we'll put it into the arena. When we go to the arena, because it has crank as an identity replacement, when it enters the arena, you may remove a steam counter from it. If you do, get an action. All right. So if we have a red or a yellow hyper driver, at that point, we're good. It goes from banish zone, BIOS update, move to the arena. You crank it, you get an action point. Hyper X3's trigger resolves, goes under it. All good. When we get a blue hyperdriver, that's where it gets weird, because blue hyperdrivers only enter the arena with a single steam counter. If we do that whole loop, BIOS update, banish, arena, crank, then we have that hyperdriver trigger that we talked about. When this has no steam counters on it, destroy it. We remove the last steam counter from crank. The trigger for the blue hyperdriver to destroy it goes on the stack. It moves to the graveyard, and then Hyper X3 fizzles. So it's just a nuance that doesn't often appear between color bands for similar cards and interactions, and it's just something about. I don't know if Maxes are going to be playing blue hyperdrivers, but if they do, knowledge is power. Be forewarned.
Yeah, so you kind of get the pick there, right? So if you resolve Hyper X3 first, your BIOS update fails. But if you resolve the blue BIOS update, then hyperdriver Hyper X3 fails. So you kind of have to make your decision. However, if you get any other color, you're fine. You will be able to do both. It's okay. But keep that in mind. Very interesting rules interaction. Dash mechanologists are starting to look a little illusionisty to me right now.
Yeah, real tricksy these.
Real tricksy these machine things. Okay, so everybody has a new. This one blew my mind slightly. I like this one a lot. Teklovossen, the Mechropotent. He has some interesting rules interactions. One, he's not a popper, which kind of makes sense, but kind of doesn't. You know, I get it though. I understand. But the one that really blew my mind is that he's a shadow demi hero.
Yeah.
And attacks that care about that hit him, and they are activated. Yep. Why is that? I don't know. But he is a shadow mechanologist demi hero. So
yeah, look at him. He's shadowy.
I didn't know he was evil until you wrote this out. So he's got to be evil, right? He's evil? Has to be.
Oh, what is evil?
I'm going to go read his lore.
Evil,
I'll come back.
Evil. Yeah, no, he's rad. But yeah, stuff that cares about equipment, about heroes with a soul, similar to Leviathan redeemed, Plasma consumed. The stuff that gets tucked under means he technically has a soul. Per his type box, he is a shadow demi hero, so things that care about shadow, attacking shadow heroes. Also, so bring to light, Bolt and Hiss and stuff like that. Herald, or maybe not that. All of that is turned on when attacking vessel.
Very
more
weird.
Importantly, yeah, very weird. And keeping on the theme of very weird on a hero, he's equipment. You can blow him up.
You can Tomotai Teklovossen off the freaking table.
Yeah, you can melt his butt into slag, and then you just got to shake their hand. You know, the better player won at that point. So effects like Buckling Blow or Buckle do affect Teklovossen, the equipment demi shadow hero. He's got it all.
He's an equipment demo demi shadow hero.
God, what a
mechanologist. Evo.
What a guy. Not an attack action. Can't pop Phantasm. Everything else, though. If he is targeted by Buckle, there's a -1 counter on him, and you buckle Teklovossen.
He's dead.
He can be destroyed. And if he is destroyed, they lose. You no longer have a hero. You immediately lose.
That is weird. And Shadow Mechanologist, Demi Hero Equipment Evo.
Look at all the typings on the side. Also,
imagine if you erase face, what happens to him? I don't even understand. Okay, so yeah, he's a weird one. It's super cool, and he's definitely evil, but very interesting one. And our final, but yet most important slide, because I know why you guys are all here. You're not here unless you play Rhinar 90% of the time. So what we've gained from this set is one. Evos don't stop pulping, and they don't stop barraging beatdown. So if they're going full turtle Evo on you, you probably win just off one red barraging. And then one more interesting one that you brought up to me is Erase Face and Royal Heroes. So
so this is relevant because of another fun card that was introduced into the not Dromai, but Dromai pool. The Tome of Imperial Flame, where they get all sorts of cool upside if they are rolled.
Yep.
Dromai equips and runs Crown of Dominion, which makes her royal. And then she plays this card. She's redlining, she's ravenous rabbling, she's suddenly playing Tomotai and Vincerikai, all the stuff that you thought you were safe from, and redline Dromai, and it's here. But why it's interesting to us brutes, Erase Face, as you may know, 6 power, 2 cost, it's pretty good into our curve. Unfortunately, when a hero has Crown of Dominion equipped, Erase Face does not remove Royal from that hero. This is due to clause 6.36, continuous effects that remove a property or part of a property from an object do not remove properties or parts thereof that were added by another effect. Crown of Dominion adds Royal to Dromai. Erase Face cannot, as another continuous effect, remove that effect that was added. So that's different from something like Blizzard or Hypothermia, where they explicitly modify the rules of the game, where they cannot gain go again in that instance. But that's what Erased Face is missing that would allow that interaction. So
Yeah. Okay.
too long didn't read. Erased Face and Royal Dromai will not remove Royal from Dromai with the Crown of Danger.
It's a shame. It's a shame. Illusionists get everything. But you can't remove Royal from Blitz, the Emperor and Blitz, though, which is hilarious.
Yeah, his face can be erased. It's great.
His face can be erased. So you can erase a hero that is royal, but you can't erase a hero that wants to be royal.
That gains royal.
That gains royal.
The pretenders to the crown, their dreams keep them strong.
I suggest that be changed. I find that ridiculous, but that is what the rules are.
That's the rules. We're just calling balls and strikes here.
Just whatever. Okay. So a lot of interesting rules. I'm just getting my hands on this set, so I'm a little behind. I'll probably be diving into one of these other heroes coming up. I was looking at Teklovossen because going slow and annoying my opponent speaks to me. So I'm going to be checking that out. Maybe Hyper Turtle Dash, but
that list is cool.
It's so cool. But thank you, Scott, so much for coming on. He is in the SLN Discord all the time, asking all of the little apes around if they need any help with the rules, because he can read and most of us can't. So, come in there, ask him some questions. You've seen him around.
Yeah.
You have any shout outs there real quick, Scott, before we head out of here?
As always, brute strong together. All of us are smarter than one of us. I have an easy desk job with unrestricted access to the internet, so I can look at a lot of rule stuff. I'm happy to field anything that I'm capable of. If it's over my head or you just want to ask a larger field, you can check out the Judge Hub Discord, which is for all judges, not restricted to a region or just who happens to be a fan of the best hero class.
Yeah.
Anything that you have any questions about, rules, interactions, tournament policy, procedure and penalty guidelines, all of that jazz. Great group of people that are doing volunteer stuff to try and make.
Yeah. Pretty amazing
other than
community.
That, biggest shout out. Go to your local game stores, play these messy games of Flesh and Blood and have these weird questions that you have to ask. And I don't know, shout outs to the people that let other people borrow decks to get into that.
Scott's always been a nice guy. Always been an amazing human. All right, man. Thank you for coming on the channel. Thanks for teaching us all some lessons. I hope I don't get DQ'd from a tournament due to something in this document. I'll see you around.
Jeez.
Bye.